Hi, good evening, folks. Thanks for being patient with me. I am attempting to stream Congresswoman Maxine Dexter's town hall that she's doing, her video town hall over Instagram. I'm also doing YouTube live for the first time, and I'm also doing TikTok live at the same time. So thanks for letting me stumble through multiple platforms at once. And I am going to go ahead and play Maxine's live and then intersperse commentary. So just be patient with me as I'm getting it going. Okay, it says she's going to be starting in just a few minutes so we can hang out. If folks have questions, feel free and drop them in the chat. Hi. I'm also trying to manage two platforms at once. So this is new for me. I think once I get better at it, I'll be able to kind of simulcast to two different platforms at once. So yeah. Hi, how are folks doing? I am hoping here that she gets her live going in a few minutes. I don't really know exactly what the duration is going to be or what she's going to be speaking about specifically in terms of if it's going to be more Oregon focused or if it's going to be addressing everybody nationally. But we will find out in just a moment. I hope that everybody is holding up okay. It's been pretty rough around here. I know that people are processing like just constant trauma. It's just constant trauma in the U.S. right now. And I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that we have to live through this time. Yeah. Hard to believe what is happening here. Yeah, it does feel almost unbelievable. Heartbreaking. Folks say that they're pissed. Yeah. Yeah, the gunman needs to go to prison. Oh, I am just gonna say here, since this is my first time doing YouTube Live in particular, I don't know what kinds of words are gonna get flagged by the AI. So if I use euphemisms throughout the videos, please be patient with me. Oh yeah, the dresser behind me, it was my great aunt Ruth's. She actually was from St. Paul. Yeah, thanks for letting me keep up with all these chats from both platforms. It is really messed up. I think as we're waiting for Maxine here, one of the things that I said on Facebook earlier today is that what we are, sorry, my husband's still sick. I hope it's not too loud. What we're experiencing here is very similar to what so many of us who have had to get free from a narcissistic abuser have experienced, right? It is that extinction burst kind of behavior. They want you to give up and submit. And so when you don't give up and submit, they continue to escalate their behavior in a desperate attempt to get you to comply. Right. And so the time in a woman's life when she is most in danger is when she's getting ready to leave a narcissistic abuser and he knows it. And so he's going to engage in whatever kind of behavior he possibly can to clamp down and to prevent her from getting free. And that's what's happening to the American people in this moment. And so we're in a position where we know they're going to continue to escalate violence. We know they're going to continue to do just terrible things to innocent Americans. And that is because that's the only play that they have. Narcissistic abusers, authoritarians, all they can do is intimidate and inflict violence. And so when they do that and it doesn't work, the only thing that they know to do is more of that and more of that and more of that in the desperate hope that you will submit. And we're not submitting. So I think we all need to understand and accept that it will get worse before it gets better. That's what extinction burst behavior is. It is an acceleration and escalation of desperate kind of last gasp violent tactics. Yeah, that's the reality of it. And there's not really any way, that's not really something that we can subvert and we can stop. Unfortunately, we're kind of existing in a process that has to play out. And it's going to be violent no matter what, because the regime is violent. There's no other option for them but to be violent. So no matter what we do, that's not going to suddenly make them be peaceful or law abiding. The only thing we can do is engage in the tactics that are going to topple the regime as soon as possible. And unfortunately as well, there's no quick way out of this. I've seen a lot of people in my comments today, particularly on Instagram and on Facebook, advocating for pretty significant violent actions. And like, one, y'all be careful because the government's watching what you say online. So let's not engage in threats that are essentially crimes, right? But two, people want a quick fix. They want this to be over really quickly because it's terrible and it feels really scary. It's really, really distressing. And so a lot of what we are seeing is people imagining that if we just have some kind of violent uprising, this will all be over tomorrow. And there is no quick way. There's no quick way out of this. It takes a lot of organizing, and it takes mass mobilization of the American people in the millions and millions, in sustained resistance, acts of sustained resistance, significant economic sacrifices, labor strikes, millions of people in the streets. And then it also takes us voting in the midterms. I know people don't like to hear that electoral politics is part of this, but if we look at other countries that ended their authoritarian regimes, elections were part of it. And then the people enforcing the results of the election. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks. To clarify, I never thought it was an accident. Yeah. No. I think we could talk about that, whether or not I'm still waiting on Maxine. Y'all, thanks for being patient. It says that she's going to go live in about 3 minutes. I don't know that it has to be something that we consider intentional or not. The killing, the murder of Renee Good, and the murder of Alex today. The function of a kakistocracy is to put incompetent, out of control, ill-equipped people in positions where they can inflict the most harm. So that is a feature of a kakistocracy. So whether or not anybody was expressly told to do something violent and illegal, the very nature of ICE and the kind of men that they hire to do that job, and the fact that they are heavily armed, created the circumstances in which this was inevitable, right? Yeah. Thanks for letting me keep up on comments. Yeah, some folks saying that they are out in vigils in the cold. I know that there is a vigil right now in Portland, downtown Portland. I was not able to get down there to it, which is why I'm doing Maxine's town hall instead. There's people out all over the country. I saw that folks are marching in New York. I know that there is terrible winter weather in a lot of places, and people are still turning out. What's your opinion on the Black Panthers patrolling the streets? I may have to table that question, but I will come back to it. I actually did a video on it. People demonstrating and exercising their 2A rights, that's not violence. That's not illegal. That's a constitutionally protected right. So I don't actually have any problem at all. I think that there is another group, Sons of Liberty, that has been talking, their veterans group, that has been talking about doing the same thing. I don't have a problem with that. Yeah. It's totally legal, totally constitutionally protected right. And we should not let them move the needle and pretend that it's anything else. So let me see if Maxine is live yet. Not quite yet. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I didn't really expect such a barrage of questions, so I'm trying to keep up. I'm filled with hate now, and I don't like it. I would just really encourage y'all in this time. For me, I have these moments where I get really demoralized, and I can start to lose faith in humanity. And I think it's so important that we do the Mr. Rogers thing of we look for the helpers, right? We look to the people who are doing good, which is thousands and thousands and thousands of Minnesotans, like day in and day out, right? Alex Preddy, everybody else who's out there doing the right thing, defending the Constitution, defending immigrants. Like that's the majority of the American people. ICE are not the majority. This regime is not the majority, and they don't represent us, but they're so overrepresented in the media, and their propaganda is so extreme that it can feel like that's the majority of people here, and that's not true. Yeah, I'm angry and ashamed to be an American. This is a really dark time. It's a really shameful time for our country on so many levels, and I think that the right response to that is that we take action to fix things, to stop it. Yeah. Do I think it was retaliation for yesterday's strike? I said on my Substack earlier today, I think so. I think that the escalation today, whether or not they intended to murder somebody, was absolutely retaliation for how successful and scary yesterday's strike was. The strike was terrifying to the regime because not only was it hugely successful, but it got mass popular support. Everyone was like, let's do this in our city. Let's expand this. Let's do this more and for longer periods of time. And big labor stoppages are an absolute threat to authoritarians. And so the response today to me seems very fear motivated. It seems to be not that our efforts are not working, but that what folks did in Minnesota absolutely did work. And that's why they're engaging in this extinction burst behavior that you saw today. And it will continue. Congressman Dexter is still not live, so thanks for hanging in there with me. I'm trying to answer questions. Yeah. Hi, California. Hi, folks in California. Thank you. Thanks for letting me struggle through my very first YouTube live. I'm trying to figure out how this works. It's a little bit tricky for me. Um, how do we stay nonviolent? Oh, that's such a good question. I think that's complicated, and because the Congresswoman is about to start, I probably will answer that in a little bit. So, my plan is to load up her live right now and we can listen, and I'll probably talk over her a little bit, but let me get this going. So the Congresswoman, thanks for being patient. I know nobody likes dead air. The Congresswoman is only allowing people to join lives if you are approved. So I've requested, and I'm just hanging in there, waiting to see if she approves to let me listen in. And she's just doing an intro. I'm not sure why it's not letting me listen. Thanks for being patient. So one of the things that she's saying, while I can just see the chat and it's not loaded, is that she continues to refer to her Republican, she calls them colleagues, right? Republicans in the House and the Senate as her colleagues, and people in the chat are pretty angry about that, saying that they're not colleagues, they're full-on fascists and a threat to democracy. I'm not sure why they're not letting me join the live, guys. I think they're having trouble onboarding people. Thank you for being patient. How did you get in touch with your local organizers while we're waiting? I looked them up online, actually, and somebody invited me to join Indivisible after I heard about it from Jessica Craven. So that's how I got connected with them. Also, I have a big social media platform, so local organizers reach out to me and ask me to join their chat and get involved in what they're doing and how I can support them. So that doesn't really help for most people, but getting plugged into whatever grassroots groups for us here in Oregon, that's like Indivisible, it's PERC, it's local churches, it's your neighborhood association, and then you start finding people and you start making those connections. Show up to local protests. I've found a lot of people just by showing up and making friends at protests. So it looks to me like the Congresswoman's aides are having trouble letting people in. Let me see here. I'm not sure why it's not letting me listen. Thanks for being patient. If I can't succeed in getting in on her live, is it okay if we just keep talking about what's going on and answer questions? Does that sound okay? And it seems like they might be having some technical difficulties from their end. Okay, sorry for the dead air. I might yell at my kid to see if she can come help me. Yeah, I'm here to chat and process. Thank you for bringing up that reminder that we all need space to process with each other. I think a lot of people are really isolated, especially as we're looking at weather conditions that are really tough. People are trapped at home, and we need a space to process together in a way that's healthy and doesn't whip us up and also bring us down. Right? I think the two things that the regime can do to us right now is demoralize people. They can't make it happen, but they can try to get you so demoralized that you give up, or they can get you so whipped up that you are in such a heightened emotional state that you do something that you later regret. Give me just a second. I'm gonna shout at my kid. Hey, Ruth. Hey, Ruth. Will you come help me for 1 second? Okay. I gotta get the Gen Zer in here to figure out if there's something that I'm doing wrong as to why Maxine's town hall is not working for me. So the chat that I can read, even though I can't hear anything, is basically people saying over and over again, do something, do something, do something. And I think I understand the frustration. I understand the frustration, but it would be wrong of us to presume that our elected officials are going to fix this or stop this. They're not. They're not. And I appreciated that Senator Merkley in his last town hall was very clear about that. It takes the people. And Congresswoman Dexter said that as well in her last town hall. She said civil disobedience is something that we have to engage in right now. And that's very different rhetoric than we heard from her 6 months ago. Hey, girl, do you know why there's no sound on my live? Will you help me out? right? I requested to join. There's like 100 people in the live, but I don't have any sound.
I don't know. You can exit and join it again.
I did, and there's still no sound. And there's only like 120 people in her live. So I don't know if they're having trouble letting people in.
Can you try another account? Or can someone else see if it's mute for them?
Can I borrow your phone?
Can
I borrow your phone for a second? Sorry. Ruth has conservation genetics homework today, like a lot of it due. Otherwise, she would probably be joining us. Yeah. Maybe it's on her side. I think it might be. I also think sometimes, tech hiccups, her team is working really hard to get it to work. I try to distract myself by not thinking so much. I think that it's really good for us to have healthy limits. Rep Dexter, to set healthy limits on how much we're willing to consume. I think that's one of the reasons I've kind of discouraged people from watching the videos is it necessary for you? Are you somebody who
I can hear it.
Can I borrow your phone? It's my phone. Something's wrong with my phone. Can I borrow your phone? To play it for the live. Would that work for a little bit? You can use my phone. Stream. Would that be okay? Do me a solid, girl.
Sure.
Do me a solid, girl. I'm not going to show anybody your phone. How do I turn it on? I don't know your code. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for letting me struggle through. Yeah, technology, and I'm somebody who, right, my specialty is plants. I really struggle with technology, and I probably need to either update.
Try your other account.
I'm going to try another account. Gen Z to the rescue. I'm sorry, I was saying something and I lost my train of thought. Yeah.
You only have one Instagram account?
I do only have one Instagram account.
Okay, I'm gonna reboot your phone.
Okay.
Probably just a glitch.
Okay. Can I stream on your phone while we're waiting and then I can switch over? Would that be okay? Thank you, sweetie.
How do you reboot your phone? Wait, I got it.
Okay. I struggle with tech as well.
Got it.
Okay.
Why does it just shine rainbows over it when you're trying to reboot?
I was talking about being a permaculture. So yeah, my specialty is plants, not technology. So it's and distracting yourself. Yeah, setting limits, setting healthy limits for yourself. Hi in Colorado. I think that it's important that we don't intentionally traumatize ourselves to a point where we are so paralyzed we don't want to act.
It just shines rainbows over it.
Yeah, I think that. Okay, I'll give me a second. And also, likewise, I think it's important that we set limits to how much time. I say this as a social media creator, how much time we're spending online, because I think that we can get in this cycle of just sitting and like consuming more and more and more videos. And it almost becomes reassurance seeking, where we're just looking for solutions and answers and hope. And the way that we get out of this and the answers and the hope lie in us, right? And our decision to take action and get involved. Okay, I'm gonna turn Maxine up.
In any of our best interest, we have to
Can y'all
come
hear?
together in love, in solidarity, in support of our fellow humans, in peaceful, civil disobedience, resistance. We cannot be cowardly. We cannot stay in our homes and stay silent, but we have to be as filled with grace as we can for the people who have behaved in different ways. Let's give them an opportunity to do the right thing. What is happening to our country is not a sudden transition. Let's just be clear. We have gross income, economic inequity. Our economy has left so many people behind. And it is when the middle class is smallest, this history tells us this, is when democracies are most at risk. And so what we have to do is rebuild economic security for people across this nation, rebuild true democratic principles, close the gaps that this president has clearly taken advantage of. To do all that, we have to impeach Donald Trump and clearly Kristi Noem. But that's going to take a lot of swing from some of my Republican colleagues. The courts have done an amazing job. Our attorneys general have done an amazing job. They clearly have been holding the line. So I'm seeing some more comments, questions, how we can prepare. do something
Sorry,
to
I'll hold it
stop
up
this. You know, I think the most important thing is to stay close to your neighbors, to stay supportive of the people most at risk. I was with a few of our elected leaders last night who are people of color, and they are being profiled and attacked racially. People are clearly citizens, have been public servants for many years, are having folks demanding to see their papers. You know, folks, this is a complete degradation of basic principles of human decency, and it is being set by our president. I continue to see folks, you know, filled with anger, disgust, sadness. All of those things are really valid right now, and I've gone through all of it. But I think what we have to be is brave. Courage is contagious, peaceful, and looking now. James says, I'm doing my best. Yeah, I'm doing as much as I can in the moment. I refuse to think that this is all we can do. There are more colleagues who are stepping up and finding enough is enough. We continue to embrace them and welcome them. We have to do everything we can to hold up Renee Nicole Good, Alex Preddy, the countless unnamed individuals who have been disappeared,
thousands of
assaulted. We had 32 people die in ICE detention last year, rapidly escalating. We know that someone in detention was murdered while in detention in Texas. I'm sure that's, you know, one of probably many more who have not been reported.
Someone said your congresswoman sounds like she's in shock. Yeah.
For abolish ICE. You know, I think the first step is to completely stop funding, to pull back the $175 billion that HR 1, the big beautiful bill, gave to ICE. If the Senate refuses to pass the minibus package this next week, which I think I'm certainly advocating for, they still have more money than most militaries in the world to do what they want with no appropriations, guardrails, or oversight. And that is a dangerous place to be. So that is not the end game. That is not the right answer necessarily. What we also need to do is pull back that funding. Congress has to exert the power of the purse. And to do that, we need a majority of our lawmakers to stand together. And if this murder of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy in cold blood by taxpayer paid federal agents, if that won't do it, I'm not sure what will. But your voices have extraordinary power. Your actions, your love, your peaceful resistance has enormous power. I see folks talking about November. November is an important point. I also have to wonder what's going to happen between then and now. It's a long time.
It is a long time.
And there's reports that some Republicans are thinking about resigning. There's a very narrow margin.
I think it's 3.
I cannot give up hope that people will find their courage and their principles before November, because November is not a given. Our elections are at stake. We have to protect the ballot. There's no reason to believe that Donald Trump will recognize the outcomes of elections. We have to be vigilant. Democrats have continued to articulate to some degree what's happening, and then
to some degree
not necessarily prepare for the worst.
Yep.
And I think we are in a place where we have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. That includes leaning into your communities, being sure that you understand how to be a legal observer, being sure that you understand how to support your most vulnerable members of the community, once again, I want to lift up what Minnesotans have done. They have brought groceries, diapers, childcare, homeschool opportunities to people in their community who are being.
Do you guys care if I dip out for a minute? Because I have a lot of thoughts, and I know that I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat. Can I turn her back up in a little bit, but just share a few thoughts? I like Maxine. I didn't vote for her in the primary. I did vote for her in the general election. For me, one of my great frustrations is that she's been quite timid, and her philosophy is that she is constantly reaching across the aisle and trying to get Republicans, who she calls her colleagues, her friends, to see the light, right? She's sort of trying to midwife their journey out of MAGA, or if they're not MAGA, their complicity with Donald Trump, right? Either they're voting with Trump because they're afraid, or they're voting with him because they're fascists. And either way, coward or fascist, like either way, I don't give a shit. Stop supporting fascism. So I understand her desire to have those conversations and try and get people to leave MAGA, to try and get Republicans to break from Donald Trump. I am frustrated at the way that she thinks that they are still just like misguided, or that having conversations with them will get them to do anything. I do agree that a consistent pressure campaign is important. And I do agree that ultimately all of this is on the shoulders of Republicans. I had somebody in my chat on TikTok say, Democrats are as complicit and it's Democrats' fault, and that ICE just got funded a whole bunch more money. So the bill only passed the House, and it only passed by a very, very slim majority. And some folks said, well, 7 Democrats voted with the Republicans. Okay, but over 200 Democrats voted against it. And the 7 that voted with the Republicans, I know it looks like they won the vote, but there were multiple Republicans who didn't vote to make it look like it was a bipartisan bill and Democrats swung it. So if there had been more Democrats not voting with the Republicans, then the other, 3 Republicans would have also voted. So it's going to pass no matter what. This is solely on the shoulders of the Republicans, and it still has to go to the Senate. And so we still have a chance now. Hi in New Zealand. Ruth is looking at studying abroad in New Zealand, by the way. They have a great fish and wildlife program. Okay, sorry. So when it comes to the Senate, there still is that 60 vote threshold. And what we're seeing is corporate Democrats, Chuck Schumer, Alyssa Slotkin, Cory Booker, and others who are taking this very moderate position of like, hey, we're not saying that we won't vote for this. We'll vote for this if you give ICE body cameras and if you have them do de-escalation training. And I wonder if the events of today are going to change their tune. I have not seen their updated messages, right? Their updated spin on this issue. But Democrats actually do have the votes to obstruct this bill. And so I think when we're looking at how do we leverage, what are the pressure points? I think that there is the Democrats in the Senate, in particular, those that are waffling, right? My senators are not going to vote for this. But maybe your Democratic senator is one on the fence. Maybe you have Cory Booker. Maybe you have Alyssa Slotkin. You should be pressuring them really hard. But more than that, I think if you have a Republican representative, you should be pressuring them. I think that they're really, really scared of the midterms. They're doing everything they can to gerrymander and to fuck up the vote for the midterms, but they're still scared of their constituents. Donald Trump is planning on doing a tour of a whole bunch of different districts to stump for Republican candidates for the midterms. If he thought we weren't going to have midterms, he wouldn't be putting forth that effort, right? He wouldn't be doing a tour like that. They're really, really frantic that they're going to lose their grasp on power in the midterms. And so you do have power as a constituent to levy against your Republican members, the House and the Senate. As useful as it is to call our Democratic electeds and be like, thanks for being on the right side of history, thanks for voting no, I think we have more power if we are sitting in a Republican district right now to leverage them. Don't give up. If they don't answer the phone, fine. You can make an appointment and show up with them. You have a right to meet with either your representative or their staff. It's much easier to get an appointment with their staff than it is directly with the rep, but still go. Bring a group of your friends, bring your whole Indivisible chapter, bring your knitting circle, bring the ladies from church, right? Bring your basketball club, whatever. Go meet with your elected officials if they are Republicans and put pressure on them because they're scared of us, but they have to become more scared of us than they are of Donald Trump. And a chunk of them are voting with Donald Trump right now because they're more scared. Whatever dirt he has on them or whatever threat he has to primary them, that scares them more than us. And we gotta have them recalculate. We gotta have them retool that math. So yeah. I haven't, Cory Booker, I haven't, someone in the comments, the congressional switchboard is 202-224-3121. Put it in your phone. Actually put the office number for your reps and your rep and your senators in your phone, in your contacts, and call them every day. Cory Booker's original plan, and a number of them that they have been talking up, I'm sorry, I'm not going to have the list in front of me of all of the senators who are signing on to this plan of like, we'll go ahead and fund ICE if you just give them body cams and de-escalation training, right? Alex wasn't escalating anything. Alex was murdered in cold blood. And I think that gets me to, sorry, I'm checking all the comments. I think that gets me to the second point, which is that Alex was not violating the law in any way. He didn't do anything wrong. We have a constitutionally protected right, Second Amendment protected right to carry. And in Minnesota, you can open carry. Not only that, but DHS put out this statement that was just like absolute complete bullshit, saying that ICE was under threat, that he approached, I think it's actually Customs and Border Patrol, not ICE, that he approached them with a firearm and they felt unsafe. If you watch the footage, there's multiple angles. You can clearly see that they're gaslighting the shit out of all of us. And that not only did he not retrieve his firearm, he was holding a phone, he was filming, and Border Patrol came up to him and he didn't do anything wrong. And at the time that they shot him, after pistol whipping him in the head, his hands were both visible and they had already taken his weapon and removed it. So it's just straight up murder, right? And so if your member of Congress is a Republican and they're real big, like 2A, like locked and loaded, right? You gotta, stay strapped, stay safe. Well, he was strapped and not safe. He was murdered by Customs and Border Patrol in cold blood in broad daylight. So, why can't Christy? Oh, yeah. So I'm getting comments on both places about the way that the regime just straight up lies. And I was talking with a friend about this earlier today because she's like, I get so mad listening to their lies. Greg Runt Bavino said in a conference today, and Christy Noem said that Alex was the aggressor. And we know that that's not true. They also said Renee Good was the aggressor. And we know that that's not true. There've been more than a dozen cases in the last year where ICE or Border Patrol have shot or beaten or injured somebody in some way, and then they file assault charges against those individuals. More than a dozen of those have been thrown out because there's no evidence. They lie and say this person assaulted an agent or threatened an agent, and it's simply not true. And people get really riled up over that because your sense of justice, right? Here is somebody that they victimized, and they are now calling that person the criminal. They're now saying that was the violent person, right? It's that Darvo, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. And so when we look at that, it really gets us activated. And that's what they want. They want you to be outraged. They know that they're lying, but they're using the Joseph Goebbels Third Reich Ministry of Propaganda handbook, which says lie some more, continue to lie, never back down. You lie and lie and lie until the public believes it. So there's not going to be any truth telling. I think we should accept by now that whatever comes out of DHS is a bald-faced lie. Tricia McLaughlin, Christy Noem, Greg Bavino, they're liars. And it's pretty clear to all of us that whatever they say, that the opposite is likely true. And we shouldn't let that get us rattled or get us really worked up, because none of us believe it. We all know that it's a lie. We have to understand what they're trying to do, which is to get you to freak the fuck out and do something foolish when you're escalated. And likewise, we should never expect a ministry of propaganda. We should never expect the fascists to be truthful. We should understand that they're never going to take responsibility. They're never going to communicate the truth. That's not the goal. Their only action, right? Threaten and inflict violence. But likewise, a form of violence is blaming the victim, is trying to slander the victim and paint them as a criminal, as a person who deserved what happened to them. That's all part of their tactics. And so we can't, I know it's hard when you hear them say these terrible things to not get really mad. Sometimes I get really mad, but if there's a way you could just not listen to their briefings, like maybe you don't really need to watch Greg Bavino. Maybe you don't really need to listen to Christy Noem if that gets you really escalated, because they're not going to tell the truth at all. That's never a thing that they're going to do. They're just going to lie and lie and lie and lie and lie. And actually, I wonder how many people are going to believe it, right? How many people are convinced of this? I know that when we get online, we can see a lot of people. We must triple down on documenting. Yes, thank you for saying that, Tammy. I completely agree. We have camera footage from multiple angles of this murder today, and that's really, really important, especially as we have heard from Minnesota officials that they are, the regime is already denying them access. They've already compromised the crime scene. Same thing that they did with Renee Good. So it's really important. We as Americans, our job very much is to collect and document what's happening, because there will be a day when we get justice. If we cannot stop what is happening now, then it is crucial that we document so that we get justice in the time to come. I don't think that we should see that as less than. If we have to do the most that we possibly can. And in many instances, documenting is the most that we can do, especially when we're looking at what they're doing to immigrants. There have been so many instances where immigrants and American citizens have been charged, like there was Richard L.A., that influencer. ICE tried to charge him with ramming his car into their vehicles, and they shot him, right? It went to trial, and there was video evidence that contradicted what ICE had claimed. And then ICE said, well, our body cams show that he did this thing. And the judge said, okay, turn it over. And they said, no, thank you. And so the case was actually dismissed. And part of that was bystanders who were willing to film and create that real-time evidence. Yeah. Someone said that they're in Alabama and it's a foregone conclusion that people here believe it. Yeah, I don't know how to overcome. I would love people's insight on this. I don't actually know how to overcome the disinformation and misinformation, and the way that people are really indoctrinated to believe whatever they hear on Fox News. I actually hope that in the time to come that we have a significant amount of reform in how media organizations work. Like, I believe in freedom of the press, but Fox News is not press, right? And what is their responsibility when they knowingly spread propaganda? CBS too, as well, and CNN. Yeah. Thanks for giving me a second to read the chat. Documentation, aka gathering evidence, everything we can document. And then we need to watch the videos. Yeah, so I think for us as the American people, we have to be careful how much we're willing to watch, right? And whether that is prompting you to act or is causing you to freeze up. For me, those of us who have been victims of gun violence, let's just put it that way, or those of us who have been victims of narcissistic abusers, I think have to be particularly careful how much we're consuming this and whether it's helpful for us. I don't need to watch the video again to know that they murdered Alex in the street, right? I'm going to turn, let's hear what Maxine has to say. I'm going to come back to her for a second.
To family detention, what happened to Diana in my community and her family, who was seeking.
This is a woman and her 4 American citizen children.
With a nosebleed and a fever.
Oh no, this is the woman
who
who
were detained in front of a hospital in my district.
Yeah, this is the family that was detained.
This is not the worst of the worst.
Trying to take their 7-year-old to the ER.
This is an authoritarian regime trying to control the people, and they are using intimidation and fear to do it. Solidarity, bravery, courage, standing together is critically important. Peaceful civil disobedience. Minnesota has been a beacon of courage, and we should all aspire in our communities to be as engaged and brave as Minnesotans have been for weeks now. Just imagine how much it must take for these folks to go out every day and stand up for their neighbors, knowing that their fellow Americans have been murdered, not once, but twice. Just imagine what that must feel like. And yet they do it day after day. Jack Smith's testimony, absolutely. He spoke the truth about the insurrection and January 6th. The lies continue. We are far past any question about whether or not this president should remain seated. He has had impeachable offenses so many times.
25 times.
Donald Trump has to be removed from office by Republicans, and he needs to be held accountable for the murders of Americans, for the disappearance of Americans.
I'm going to step in there for a second. Again, Maxine is not wrong. So one of the things that's potentially going to come out of the midterms is that the House is going to swing blue. A vote to impeach him likely will happen, right? Trump even said, if the midterms go off as planned, he's going to get impeached. And the problem is then it moves to the Senate, where there are likely not going to be enough votes to convict and remove him from office. Likewise, JD Vance and Marco Rubio have also committed impeachable offenses. All three of the top guys, right? The problem is that there are not Republicans who have the courage to do the right thing. And I'm not sure how we overcome that. I'm struggling to figure out, and I think this is what everybody in the entire country is struggling to figure out, right? Like, we have this comprehensive failure of the Constitution on multiple levels. The checks and balances have completely fallen apart. And the center of that really is the Republicans in Congress. They are the reason that Donald Trump is getting away with all of this. I think we can focus a lot on Trump, and I appreciate what Maxine is saying about how we need to impeach and remove him. Sure, okay, sure, in an ideal world, okay. But in reality, Republicans aren't going to do that. And whether we can create a massive pressure campaign to get them to see the light, I don't know. Nothing has worked so far, except for Thomas Massie. And the reason that Thomas Massie has voted with the Democrats over and over again is because of his fringe isolationist ideology. Like, he's a real wackadoo, y'all. Sort of libertarian, but also like really isolationist. So a lot of times when he votes with the Democrats, it's because he's voting true to his political ideals, not because he's opposed to what Donald Trump is doing. Which is whatever. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Okay. But when it comes to the courts are acting really slowly. They're so often ruling on the side of the people and on the side of the law. I saw that in Minnesota, the AG has filed for a emergency restraining order against ICE and Customs and Border Patrol. But we have to see that hopefully should be coming soon. But these other cases can take months and months and months and months, and it's too long. The court system moves too slowly. And then we have these 6 fringe conservative justices at the top who undo all of the good rulings underneath. And so there's that failure. There's Donald Trump, who's a would-be authoritarian, who clearly is hell-bent on making himself a dictator. However addled he is, and however much control he has, behind him is Stephen Miller, who is unelected. Nobody in this country voted for Stephen Miller. He's deeply unpopular, even with Republicans. Stephen Miller is behind the scenes pulling all the strings and pushing what's happening in Minnesota and everywhere else. None of us voted for him. So the executive is entirely corrupt. Donald Trump has weaponized the Department of Justice. But then you look at Congress. Congress is the most powerful branch of government. And Mike Johnson and John Thune and the Republicans could have stopped this on day one. Any week, pick any week in the last year, they could have stopped this. And they're choosing not to. So for me, that's my greatest source of frustration and kind of bafflement, is that Republicans, particularly in the Senate, have not checked Trump's powers, and they're going along with this, knowing that it's very unpopular. And we keep hearing from them over and over again, like, this is hurting my constituents. This is not good for my constituents. They know that what they're doing is wrong and bad, and they're doing it anyway. And I don't really have a good grasp of why it is that they're doing that, what kind of dirt he has over them, or if they're just cowards and they care more about their seats and their own power. So someone in the comments said there's no accountability, and that they think that Miller will push Vance out. This brings up a really good question. I'm sorry I hopped off of Maxine's call, but it's a little, yeah, okay. We're going with the flow here. When it comes to Stephen Miller, hugely uncharismatic, hugely unpopular. I like to call him Grima Wormtongue, right? He's slimy and gross, and everybody knows it, and he's just whispering in Trump's ear and pulling levers. But likewise with JD Vance, he's also not very charismatic. Other Republicans in Congress really can't fucking stand him. They hate him. And somebody in my comments on Facebook earlier today said the United States is 1930s and 40s Germany, and that peaceful protest doesn't work because it didn't work in Germany. And I think there's a number of key differences. I don't think that we're actually like Germany much at all. But one of the ways that I think we are least like Germany is that the Nazis were really popular. They had the support of the people. Hitler was really popular. And authoritarian regimes, they actually rely on popular support. The consent of the governed still exists. And so when you have an authoritarian who's deeply unpopular and a mass movement of people who are growing, building, mobilizing, taking on bigger risk and bigger actions, that authoritarian is going to topple. And should something happen to Trump because he's old and frail and ill health, did y'all see the bruises on his hands? He's clearly demented. He's sundowning. I like to say as the dwindles. Whether or not he makes it to the midterms or beyond, whoever his successor would be, J.D. Vance, or as someone said in the comments, like if somehow Stephen Miller pushes these other guys out, neither Miller nor Vance have the charisma or the strength to get popular support. They will be less popular than Trump is, and Trump is already incredibly unpopular. So to me, when I look at what happens after Trump, I don't see there being any cementing of their power. I don't see that as being a path to success for them. So I'm baffled as to why Republicans in the Senate are hanging on. They can see that their days are numbered. They should do a Marjorie Taylor Greene and be a rat fleeing that sinking ship, right? And I don't understand why they're not. Yeah. Thanks for giving me a second to read comments. They didn't have social media and iPhone cameras in 1930s Germany. Yeah, you know, people in Germany like to say, oh, they didn't know that the concentration camps existed until after the war. People were much more isolated. News traveled really slowly. We are documenting in real time, and we have far more tools at our disposal to counter their propaganda, right? That means that we are able to communicate the truth of what is happening and also have measures to help counter the lies. And yeah, I think that's a really, really crucial difference. Yeah. Someone said American regime security forces execute a health worker in the street. Yeah, a healthcare worker in the street. That's exactly what happened. Oh, that brings me to a point too. I think that we should play the propaganda game, right? We can use our tools. That's sort of what I've been trying to do with my platform for the last year, is use the tools at our disposal to create propaganda for good. We have to think about our messaging. When I talk about civil disobedience in particular, those are performances that you engage in to try and turn public opinion away from the regime and toward the people. We have to be strategic in our messaging. And that's one of the reasons that I'm so opposed to, oh, sorry. Someone says, I'm not staying, Angela. The Portland ICE facility is lit right now. Thank you. Thanks, Tony. I will go look and see what's happening down there. So, oh, by the way, if y'all don't follow Kevin Foster, I'm always trying to talk up local journalists here in Portland. If you don't follow Kevin Foster, he covers the ICE facility like at least 5 days a week. He does such good journalism. If you want to know what's happening at the ICE building in Portland, definitely go follow him on Instagram. And I think he has a TikTok as well. Okay. Keeping track of 2 chats and then not losing my train of thought is difficult. So if you want to remind me what I was saying, that would be great. Oh, propaganda game. So we have to think about our messaging and being strategic. So when I'm seeing all kinds of bots and all kinds of agent provocateurs, saboteurs in the comments trying to rile people up and get people to engage in violent action, you have to understand that this is a numbers game. That's why we are using our communication skills to bring people to our side. That's why we have a low barrier of entry. Events like No King's Day, Honk and Waves, low level, small ask of people to ask them to step into resistance work and then level up. It's literally a numbers game. We need mass opposition against the regime. Remember, a popular autocrat can stay in power. An incredibly unpopular autocrat who has the people mobilized against him cannot stay in power. And so we need to bring people in, people who are apathetic, people who are unengaged, people who are scared to do bigger actions. We got to empower them and encourage them. Bring them in and then level them up. The minute you start engaging in violent actions against the regime, you're going to turn off all of those people. They're going to say, "Whoa, I don't want to be part of a movement where people are smashing shit," which again, breaking shit is not violence. I don't want to be part of a movement where people are smashing shit. I don't want to be part of a movement where y'all are committing violence against other people. We lose popular support immediately, time and time and time again. Resistance movements that get violent, they lose credibility, they lose support, and people start to sympathize with the regime more. So when I am opposed to violent direct action, honestly, y'all, it's not so much about my morals and ethics. It's coming from a place of strategy. It's a tactical choice to be nonviolent because I understand that we have got to get everybody on our side. And the way we do that is that we utilize tactics that don't alienate people and don't cause them to sympathize with the regime. And we don't give the regime anything it can use for propaganda to then try and twist what we are doing. That's nonviolent, right? So, yeah. Sorry, I'm reading comments. Someone said, in terms of numbers, talking about a general strike, support the ACLU. Yes, I do support the ACLU. If you are ever tempted to like throw a tip at me, give money to the ACLU instead. Or in a video that I put out yesterday about Minnesota, if you go to the description on that video on YouTube, I linked to a whole bunch of folks on the ground in Minnesota who are doing really good work, organizations that are feeding people, that are helping people get their cars towed after they've been abducted by ICE. People are distributing food and other resources. So I really encourage you to check out that list and throw a little bit of money at them. All kinds of good folks in Minnesota who need our support right now. Someone said general strike. What happened yesterday was a one-day general strike. It was incredibly successful, huge turnout in the streets, no school, no work, no shopping. And unions all over Minnesota participated. That was a threat to the regime, especially because we saw in the wake of that or during that, people saying, hey, we should replicate this. We should do the same thing here. The regime is not only an autocratic regime, it is also an oligarchy. It is also about the kleptocracy. It's also about billionaires having all of the power and all of the money. And billionaires, like, they don't really care if ICE agents get shot in the streets. Like, they don't care about people. They don't see us as people. They don't see ICE agents as people. Clearly, because Stephen Miller is hoping to create a situation in which somebody kills an ICE agent. But they care about money an awful lot. And I think that we have been so hesitant to make the sacrifices to pull economic levers when it comes to huge, sustained boycotts. I mean, real sacrifices. We can't get people right now to stop buying from Amazon, to stop going to Target, to stop going to Starbucks. And we need to have some really serious, huge boycotts with very specific demands. And likewise, labor strikes work really well. And I know that the Republicans have spent decades eroding the power of unions, right? And making it really difficult for folks to strike. In fact, the general strike yesterday, they couldn't call it a strike because, you can call it a labor stoppage. You can call it a walk. You can call it a day of action, but you can't call it a strike because of the laws that will penalize unions for engaging in that behavior. Because it was such a well put together event with such a high level of participation, and because other states wanted to do it, I do definitely think what you saw this morning was a response. It was a punishment for that yesterday. It was meant to deter us. Sorry, just checking comments. Yeah. People are agreeing with me that we need economic levers and boycotts. Boycotts get to regular people. Okay, so great comment. I hear this a lot. I don't want to participate in a boycott. I don't want to stop shopping at Target because I'm just hurting the workers there. Well, first off, the workers at Target are being exploited. Target ended their DEI policy. Target is intentionally hurting their Black employees specifically, especially, but everybody, right? There were American citizens dragged out of a Target store, beaten and abducted because they're brown. And Target didn't do anything. And Target is allowing ICE to use their parking lots as rendezvous points. They're allowing ICE to come into their stores. So these employers are hurting their own employees. But if you look at boycotts and hurting employees, if you look at strikes and the way that people have to call off the job and they lose income and potentially healthcare, real significant financial sacrifices that people make. When you look at a boycott, we are just sacrificing buying shit. We're being inconvenienced. A boycott is an inconvenience, but the workers could potentially lose their jobs, lose income. Part of a successful resistance movement is the bake sale aspect, right? It's not the Montgomery bus boycott as much as it is the bake sale. We have to figure out how to care for people. And I think the main reason we've not seen more labor strikes so far is that we have not figured out how to put together strike funds and how to care for each other. I had an awful lot of people in my comments on Facebook earlier today who are not from the US being like, great job yesterday, like lots of praise for yesterday. They're like, okay, do it everywhere. Why is that not happening everywhere starting today? And it's because we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the support networks. We don't have the funding to take care of everybody, right? You have to build that scaffolding. So we can't tell people call off the job for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, but we don't have a strike fund to help them pay their rent and to feed their children, right? So yeah, I think we really need to look to the civil rights movement and what folks did then to organize really successful boycotts and strikes. If we're going to be able to replicate that success, we have to learn from what they did and we have to take proper steps instead of just being like, let's strike everybody without having created the conditions that will make a strike successful. What do you think is the best way to show support tonight and tomorrow for Minnesota? I think donate to folks on the ground is a really good way. I think there are vigils everywhere. I understand a lot of people are, because of the weather around the country, not able to attend vigils. I did see one of the clips from Minneapolis. There was a protest that was inside to be more accessible for folks who couldn't stand out in negative 20-degree weather. And I appreciate so much that organizers are taking into account the elderly, children, people with disabilities, and giving them ways that they can protest and stand up. I think that's really important. Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm reading up on chats. I love my local co-op and market. Yeah, there are so many ways that we can help educate each other about how to have better economic impacts. I think for most Americans, part of what is frustrating to me is that a lot of us are not even willing to experience mild discomfort. And folks in Minnesota are showing us what happens when the regime sees you stand up a little bit. And their response is not to be coward and not to back down, but it's to take on greater risk, to willingly sacrifice or put themselves up to potentially have to sacrifice so much more. When I look at the level of kind of apathy, inaction from a lot of Americans, either because they don't know what to do or they're really checked out or they feel like they can't get their shit together to make more sacrifices. And then I look to the folks in Minnesota and they're like, hey, our neighbors are being murdered in the street and we're not going to back down. In fact, we're going to come out in greater numbers. We are more determined. We're going to care for our immigrant neighbors even better. We're going to make sure that they get fed. We're going to make sure that they get to the doctor. We're going to make sure we take care of each other. I think that that is such an example of how we should be moving and acting right now. Yeah, so people are saying that there's stuff going on with the McAdam building in Portland tonight. I anticipate there probably will be. ICE is in Maine, yes. ICE is everywhere. I do think it's important to remember, too, that they can't sustain this level of violence. What you're seeing in Minnesota is really, really devastating, but they can't sustain this level of violence everywhere. They're already using most of ICE, and Customs and Border Patrol has more folks, but Border Patrol can't operate in the center of the country, and they can't do this everywhere, right? If you put Border Patrol and ICE together, I think it's less than 25,000 people who work for both of them combined. And there's 340 million of us, and there's also 2 million members of the armed forces. So feed the hungry if you can. That's so important. Who's actually on the border? Good question. Nobody. ICE and Border Patrol have had to pull people off the border. I thought Republicans wanted border security. They've had to pull people off of the border to shoot nurses in the street. So, yeah. Folks in the suburbs of Philly, try to mess with Philly. This is a really good question, and I am not an expert on Philly. I've never been there. I know that y'all can handle shit. I know that a lot of people are speculating that because what is happening in Minnesota is backfiring so hard on the regime that they're moving to pivot to Philly because they're escalating the violence in Minnesota and they're not getting the appropriate reaction that they want, which is they want somebody to shoot an ICE agent. They want somebody to kill an ICE agent so that they can say, Insurrection Act, we've got an insurrection. They want a riot to start, right? It's like George Floyd protests. A white supremacist started the riot in Minnesota for the George Floyd protests. They're going to have agent provocateurs. They're looking to stoke violence because they're not getting what they want in Minnesota. I've seen a lot of people in Philly in particular speculating that they're pivoting there in the hope of getting a violent insurrection. And even more than that, the optics of what they're doing in Minnesota are really bad because they thought they would come in and brutalize Somalis in particular, Somali Americans, because most of the Somali folks in Minnesota are American citizens. They thought they would brutalize them and that we would all just like, But the thing is that they're hurting white people and the optics are really bad. Minnesota's very white. They want to pivot and go somewhere where they can brutalize Black folks. And they think that will go over better with their base and more people will tolerate it. And they think it will fit their narrative. So I know organizers in Philly are aware of the optics. They're aware of what's happening. And I know that they are making appropriate moves. But we should just be aware of how everything the regime does, wherever they fail, because they fail catastrophically everywhere they try something. They tried California, LA. They thought like, oh, we'll go for Latinos and everybody will be okay with that. Didn't work. They tried Portland because they're like a bunch of panko, radical leftist, democratic socialists. We have a bunch of democratic socialists on our city council. We'll go for these socialist, leftist, weirdo terrorists or whatever. And it didn't work here. They've tried everywhere and it's not working. So they're going to pivot out of Minnesota, I think, probably relatively soon, especially because the optics of killing white people is not good for the regime. I did want to say one other thing. Oh, Ohio is a red state and you've had ICE there. Yes, absolutely. But they're not going to try the same level of terror in a blue city that they're trying in Minneapolis. They're not going to try that kind of terror that they're doing in Portland, LA, DC. Notice blue cities. They're not going to try that in a deeply red city. That's not going to happen. Although most cities are, I think, majority blue. They're just often very gerrymandered districts, right? Okay. So the other thing I wanted to say is that I had a friend who has a lot of MAGA friends and family texting me about how outraged they were at Alex's killing. I'm going to have 5 minutes left on live, just so y'all know, on TikTok. Thanks. How outraged people were in a way that they weren't outraged about Renee Good. And I do think it has a lot to do with the fact that he was a white man. He had like a respected professional position, and he was a 2A'er. And that has pissed off a certain crowd that was never going to be pissed off when they saw a member of law enforcement gun down a woman in the street, particularly a lesbian. Women, white women, we are not, tell all your white women Republican friends, like, we are not protected under this system. White women are used to justify violence against other people. We are not protected. They don't give a shit about white women being gunned down. But the minute a white man, especially one who's pro 2A, gets gunned down in the street in what is obviously a murder, I think that that's going to shift some of the optics. And it's terrible that that's what it takes for white men to give a shit. But I do think that that's going to have an impact. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for letting me ramble about a bunch of things. And thanks for letting me dip out on Maxine. I just felt like it was going to be more of the, like, we got to be peaceful. We got to protest. And I take issue with the term peaceful protest because peaceful is non-disruptive. And also, nobody in the United States should expect peaceful in a protest in 2026. And that's because wherever law enforcement is, especially ICE, they will be violent. There is no protest that you or I are going to attend in 2026 that we should have an expectation of peace. Last year, we talked in our Indivisible group and our safety team about how we were planning for a future where protests were no longer safe for children and pets. They were no longer marches and rallies, but they were places where we should expect state violence to be enacted against us. So I would encourage people to stop using the term peaceful protest. There's no expectation that it will be peaceful because they are determined to instigate violence against us. They are determined to brutalize us. And if you go into a protest this year, I think that you need to have that expectation. Put your lawyer's number or the American Lawyers Guild number on your arm. Have a will. Notify your family and friends of where you are. Make sure that you're working in affinity groups. You're not showing up by yourself. You are collaborating and communicating and working with other people as a team, and that you keep each other safe. That's the reality of 2026 America, unfortunately. Yeah. I don't mean to leave it on a low note. That was a little bit heavy. But I'm probably going to dip right now and make a few videos tonight and talk about some of the things that I think are hopeful and are going well. I really want you to be encouraged that we are starting to see elected officials move, that the Attorney General is filing for a restraining order. I think that we do all need to be prepared that our elected officials, particularly Democrats, are not going to be able to stop this, and that we have to be organizing locally to build this mass movement, bring in millions and millions and millions of people, because that is the way that we stop this. Mass public opposition against the regime, mass popular support for the resistance movement, people being willing to take bigger actions, huge numbers of people in the streets, huge sustained economic boycotts, intense mutual aid, making sure that we do not let people fall through the cracks and we care for folks. That's so important. They want people alone and floundering and having their needs unmet. They want to be able to pick people off. We got to care for each other right now. And then also thinking about large labor strikes. What does that look like? Yeah. So thanks, y'all, for letting me ramble for an hour. Wow. Okay. Y'all take care. I'm going to have some videos out later this evening, and maybe I'll try and do live again on YouTube. I really appreciate all the kind comments. Y'all were amazing. Thank you. Okay. Good night.